Welcome to Test, ladies and gentlemen. All right, I appreciate everybody very much for coming by. So I do have a really nice game for you guys between Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Wesley So, taking out around 7 from Altibox Norway chess tournament. It's been a crazy day. Aronian defeated Magnus Carlsen. If you haven't seen, it was a really nice Armageddon game that they played. I mean, I would call it an upset just because Tari is 200 points lower than Magnus Carlsen, but I think he's definitely going to get some points from this tournament because he's been playing pretty well with these guys. But, of course, for all my people in the Philippines, I will say Mabuhay to you, Kamusana, King Makai Bigan, Masaya Komakid Kang Muli. I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by and taking a look at my stuff. And for anybody who is coming from France, I will say bonjour to you, bienvenue. Comment allez-vous? Comment ça va? Ça me fait plaisir de te voir, mes amis. I appreciate you guys very much. Merci beaucoup for coming by and taking a look at my stuff. I really appreciate it. But if you guys are ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have for this game. So we got e4, e5, knight comes to f3. We got knight to c6, bishop to b5. We got knight to f6, and then we do have castles. And so we have the Berlin defense. So I think a lot of you guys are really familiar with the Berlin defense. Basically, black is just trying to play as solidly as possible. I mean, they're not necessarily playing for a draw, but they're just trying to play as solidly as possible, you know, to be defensive and to make sure that white doesn't really have much that they can use. So we do see knight takes e4, but we did not just give away a pawn. We do see rook down to e1. Also, d4 is possible, just breaking the center open, and this king being in the center is a definite problem. So, you know, you don't have the ability to, you know, hold on to the extra pawn. We do see knight to d6. Knight takes e5, and of course, as you guys are probably familiar, knight takes b5 is a very horrible blunder after knight to c6 with check. And you are attacking the queen, and so the only thing the queen could do is to be a move in the way, but you're probably going to see bishop to e7, and then knight takes on d8. So we do not want to go into that variation, so we do see bishop to e7. We got bishop down to f1, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, castles, and we do have d4. So the knight goes back to e8. We're looking at moves like bishop to f6 and d6, just knocking that knight out of there because, of course, that knight cannot live there. That rook cannot live there forever. So we do see c4 just trying to grab some space. And then we do see the bishop to f6, like I said. We got rook back to e1, and then we have d5. You know, this is just too nice of a center that white has established. So we have to try to break it down some kind of way. You pretty much only have 2 different moves to do that, c5 and d5. c5 being much worse. d5 is definitely the way to go, and that is what we do see. So the pawn takes d5, queen takes d5. And not immediately knight to c3 because we do have our d4 pawn hanging. So we do have to protect that immediately with bishop to e3. And then after the bishop comes to e6, now knight to c5 does attack the queen and knocks it out of the way. So after queen to d7, we do see d5. And then we have the move bishop to f5. In this particular position, it might seem like capturing on c3 you know, is a nice little Zweizenzug move, but it actually is a very, very horrible variation to go into, and I will show you why. Bishop takes c3, you are going to be taking on e6 with the pawn, and then after the queen takes back on d1, you actually have a lot of in-between moves in this position. You have pawn taking f7 with check, king taking f7, bishop to c4, king goes to g6, rook e to d1. Even if you toss in taking on b2, you are activating the rook on a1, rook a to b1, and then after the bishop retreats, rook takes b7. And as you can see, I mean, backing up to where we were before, you know, black is actually like slightly ahead of white. They don't have this bishop developed. They basically undeveloped it. You know, this queen is not anywhere on the board. And so, you know, black is a little bit further ahead. But when we take a look at the position that we had a second ago, as you can see, I mean, white is just completely dominating this position. They have double bishops in an open game. This rook isn't doing anything, and their pawn structure is basically just like completely shattered. So we do not want to see this if we are black. But like I said, we did see bishop to f5, and then we do see the novelty of the game, which is queen to b3. You know, just attacking the pawn over here, also developing, you know, the queen to some useful square. So the knight does come to d6. We see rook a to c1. We have a6. Knight to b5 was definitely something to try. Just to kind of put a little bit of pressure on this, currently backward pawn. We do see knight to a4, and then we see a move that does actually waste a little bit of time. Knight comes down to e4. You have to be really careful when you're moving your knights that you are not putting your knights on squares where it can just get attacked. And that's pretty much what Wesley So does here. He puts his knight on e4, but that just allows Maxime to go f3. And then the knight basically goes back to where it came from. So pretty much, I mean, Maxime just got like a free move. And he is going to be able to accomplish what he was trying to accomplish by moving knight to a4 anyway, which is knight up to c5. And now you have the queen a little bit displaced. So the queen retreats back to c8. We see bishop to f4. As of right now, if you can capture this knight and force the pawn to take back, I mean, you have plenty of discoveries. I mean, you have knight to a6, knight coming down here, placing an attack on this bishop. You have a little bit of stuff that you can get rolling. So we do see rook to d8 to just defend against that. We do see king sidestepping over to h1. We have h6, a bishop takes d6, a rook takes d6, and then we do see a rook takes b7. And this might be a touch of a problem because of rook to b6. Okay, well, now we have disconnected the queen and the knight. This queen can take, this rook can take. So we are in a pretty critical point in the game. So if you do want to pause the video and see what white plays here, go ahead and do so. Okay, so in my efforts to try to mislead and make it seem like black was doing really great here, I forgot that I had the bar up here, so you guys can clearly see like, oh, this is like like black made a blunder. He did. So Wesley So did blunder in this position. He blundered his rook, and so if you guessed queen takes b6, you would be absolutely correct. Snap that rook off the board after the pawn takes. The rook does take on c8 with check, and then we actually see bishop taking c8 in this position, but this does allow rook to e8 with check, and this bishop is a little bit pinish against this rook. So we do see king down to h7, and then we do see knight to d6, but fortunately we do have bishop going to b7, which pretty much just saves the rook. And of course you cannot capture here because you are going to be dropping your rook, and you don't want to play into that type of game. So we do see bishop to d3, just tossing a little in-between move in there. We do see g6, a bishop comes to e4, and then we do see bishop taking b2. Rook takes a8, bishop takes a8, and then we do see knight down to c4, and then we do see bishop back to f6. Some of you guys might be wondering, okay, so knight, is clearly attacking the bishop here, right? So, like, can't you just go bishop to d4? Because doesn't that, like, save the pawn right here? Because you are double attacking everything, right? Well, the thing about it is that you have to make sure that you're paying attention to is the fact that this is a completely passed pawn. It started its life as an isolated pawn, but it has gone into where it is a completely passed pawn. So you have to be careful with that. So in this position, if you did think about that b6 pawn and wanted to, kind of kill two birds with one stone, retreat and defend at the same time, you would be looking at d6. And I mean, you have to play pretty desperate chess here. You're going to be looking at b5, d7, because we don't care about the knight because we're going to get a queen. So the bishop would have to come back to f6 at that point. Knight comes to d6, bishop takes e4, pawn takes e4, and you are looking at trying to deflect this bishop out of the way with this, knight to b7 is going to be protecting this queening square. So you're probably going to be going into a game where you're going to have to give up your bishop. So we do not want to do that. So like I said, we did see bishop coming back to f6 immediately. We do see knight taking b6. Bishop goes to b7. We do see d6 because, passed pawns must be pushed. We do see bishop back to d8. We see knight to d7. Bishop to c8. We do see knight down to c5. We got bishop to e6. The bishop comes to c6. We see king over to g7. Knight comes up to b7. We see bishop to f6. And then we do see a4. And unfortunately, this position, Wesley So does resign the game. You are resigning it might look like, okay, wait a minute. Like, you know, white is up a pawn, but like, can I kind of do something? Well, the problem that you have in this particular position is that Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has moved his pieces in such a way where this square and this square are both covered in this pawn's, you know, journey to try to become a queen. So you have a problem where you are going to have to give up a piece. You know, you can try to counterattack with bishop to c8, but the knight is going to come down, and you don't really have too much that you can do in this position because this bishop and this knight are doing a really good job of defending things. So at some point, you are going to be in a position where you're going to have to give up either this bishop or this bishop for this pawn. That is how strong this pawn has become. So like I said, you know, you are in a position that is just not possible to win. I mean, you know, unless Maxime blunders, but he hasn't really blundered the entire game. So, I mean, you know, with something that's this short, I don't feel like he's going to blunder here. I'll say Malakas si Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So I appreciate everybody very much for stopping by. Merming Salamat, King Makai Bigan. You know, merci beaucoup, mes amis, anybody who is coming from France. And I'll see you guys next time.